And I didn't have a problem with it because that's what attracted me to her.
Right.
How she looked. I'm confident in my situation. We had conversations. I expressed the opinions of other people. I wasn't trying to tell her she should change, but just be knowledgeable. And her retort was, okay, that's their problem. Because I know who I am as a person. I'm not loose. I'm not this. I'm about my business. I look good in what I wear, and I like to wear what I want to wear. Cool. If you like it, I love it.
Yeah.
When I would get this.
Welcome back, family. Do you guys remember this guy? I believe his name is Derek Jackson. He was on the internet as the self-appointed savior of all women, either in or wanting a relationship. He'd spend a lot of his time being judgmental and cracking down on men in general. A lot of his advice was actually quite good, except the person who needed Derek Jackson's advice the most was, in fact, Derek Jackson. While this man was telling the world what to do, he had a whole wife at home who was battered, abused, humiliated, cheated on, but he was writing books and telling the world how to navigate their relationships. Well, where there's a cat, there's a copy. So now this other dude has taken up the mantle, except that he's a tad more, shall I say, flamboyant. Now, normally I'd scroll right past this type of content. It has nothing to do with me. But the reason it came to my attention is because it's being shared by sisters. I don't see any other ethnicities taking this dude seriously. Maybe they figured out that if they want actual relationship advice, they'll go to a professional and not some guy on Facebook. So what we'll do in this episode is play clips so you can form your own opinion. Is the advice good? Is he right? Is it dangerous? Is he enticing a gender war? What's his agenda? Now, after each quote, we will respond. I am your host, Stefan, and I am joined at the Men's Refinery in Conyers, Georgia, by one of the owners, Vino Sanders, who's been married for 23 years, Merlin Knight, a corporate giant, and Quentin Opong, a happily married young therapist who works with our youth and young couples. This one's going to be special, and I'm dying to hear your feedback, so don't forget to email us. Welcome to Manhood Matters. Let's get to it.
In the living room, finds his voice. 4 souls gathered, making a choice. Speaker less great news, sugar to coat. From a black man's lens, each word a keynote. Men's songs, physical strife, hustling hard, propulsive life, race love, and the entrepreneur's climb.
Then I'm going to ask you guys to just give me your thoughts on it.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So,
No man with real money cares if she's a gold digger. They just don't.
Yeah. So my question is, what is considered real money?
if you can afford to pay for whatever she needs, wants, and I guess that could be relative, right? Because some people with real money could be like, if I'm making 10 grand a month, I'm great. And some people will not great until they're making $100,000 a month.
Right.
So we don't know. So we're going to say someone who is at least at a $200,000 mark a year. I've heard women say, if you're not making $250,000 at least, you can't take care of me. You can't be with me.
I'm going to open up with a hot take, right? And it's because of what I see in therapy. And this might not be a hot take, but a lot of times women, I'm noticing, particularly in our context, black women, they're oftentimes looking for another father figure than a partner or husband. And that's why I have a problem with that statement. Because ultimately, what it's doing is putting men in this position of, as long as you're a man and you can just spend money on this woman, then she's good and you're good as a man. All she needs for you to just keep providing, right? And not saying that as men we're not providers, but it almost pits men in just, as long as you can do that, you're good, right? And it puts this woman in a situation where a woman is not seen as a partner, but ask for everything you want, and if a man can take care of it, it's cool.
Only thing I want to push back on here is this. That's not a woman saying this. I don't even want to blame the women. That's not their thought.
That's fair.
Because they didn't say it. This dude is saying it.
That's fair.
And he's almost speaking to the women and preaching almost on their behalf, when in reality, it's just him saying that stuff. I think it's a dangerous
That's fair.
Statement. But how do we respond to possibly a woman hearing this thinking, here's a man saying that no man with real money care if I'm a gold digger.
Does
That's
he
good.
really know what a real man
Obviously
is?
he doesn't. So
Yeah.
what
Because
does?
for him to spew out his mouth to say that real man with money doesn't care if she's a gold digger, whereas we have sisters, we don't want them being gold diggers.
Right.
So they're putting themselves in a situation where they're able to be abused or manipulated because of the fact that I'm going to buy you whatever it is, but you do exactly what I say.
Now they're controlling you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that is not a true statement at all. And he should be ashamed for saying it.
And
For example, this is a white dude talking to our sisters, right? And
Yeah.
for some reason, they decide they want to share that shit. But to your point, if a woman is being purchased, you're being owned.
It's
Opinion-
transactional.
Yeah, it's transactional.
Yeah.
I know you're not really for me because of anything other than the money.
Yeah.
So in that case, I'm going to act that way. If I buy a machine, I want it to work a certain way. I expect it to work a certain way, or I'm sending it back. Right?
Yeah.
Or I'm going to complain. I want it to do what it's supposed to do. And if I buy a gold digger, what do I need it to do for me?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
That's tough.
You don't have a choice.
And the thing is, we have a real life scenario of that right now,
Playing out,
dealing with, Sean Combs. He actually, during the time that he was with this young lady that he's in court with now, he had a relationship with another woman. Evidently, he did not treat her the same way that he treated this other woman because her standards were a little bit different. And he couldn't get away with some of the things that he got away with this other woman. Not to speak on her being a victim, she caused her own demise. But when you put yourself in certain positions, you're going to get certain results. I have a daughter, and one of the things I tell her is be reliant on yourself. If you find a man that is willing to provide for you, that's fine. But don't let that be the deciding factor as to whether or not you want to be with him. Because men typically, if they're in that position, as you mentioned, I now own you. So I can do and say and treat you any way that I choose to because you are here for a purpose. Long as I'm providing that purpose, then you have no say-so.
Yeah.
You have no rights.
Yeah.
You have no complaints. I think that's the message that gentleman is saying when he says that. He's putting these women in these positions by allowing them to believe that.
His business is working because it's all about clicks and likes and shares.
Exactly.
Because you have these women who have been maybe victimized because maybe they had a horrible relationship. All of a sudden they want to put all men in one bucket and they love sharing stuff like that. But the reason, again, that I think is dangerous is because it perpetuates this stigma about black women that is not even real.
Right.
They're taking a subset of the population and they're saying this is everything, this is everyone, this is how it should be.
Yeah, and I think to your point, his agenda, unfortunately, I talk to people about in different spaces, is it stifles our identity because, like, as a man, if you get caught up and bought into the idea that all you should be able to do is just throw money at your wife or at your woman, when it's time to provide emotional support, when it's time to provide mental support, when it's time to be a father, when it's time to do other things than just that thing, it's like, well, what am I supposed to do, you know? And
I've already paid for this.
Exactly.
It also then turns the table back to the woman. So because social media is giving them this platform of believing that all he has to do is toss $1 at you or $3 at you, and all of a sudden now you are the creme of the creme. So what does it say about you as a person? So because you're now allowing this guy to say that I'm going to be that provider, but more so I'm really just going to be the purchaser, and I have a
that's a
receipt.
better word.
So when I'm done with it,
It's not a provider, it's a purchaser. Yeah.
and when I'm done
Oh, we're
with
going to
it,
quote that one.
Yeah.
yeah, when I'm done with it, I can cash in and or return it.
Yeah.
and for the newest model.
And that's exactly
Absolutely.
what will happen. And not only does it poison the mind of our women, but you think about these young guys that are hearing this. It takes me back to this song all of us are familiar with. You're not tricking if you got it. Yeah, you still are tricking. You just
Right.
you just spending more. But it leaves the idea with these young men that all I have to do is acquire this money and I can treat women any kind of way.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong message that's being put out there.
Well, like you said, you have daughters. I have sisters, 9 to be exact. So I would never want them to be in a situation where someone is saying, I'm going to be that provider.
Yeah.
Then all I do is provide the financial aspect to it. When that shoe turns, I need more than just your dollar.
Yeah.
So who becomes the gold digger at that point?
So the next thing that he says,
Women should be gold diggers. Women should look for a provider. What's wrong with that?
Man, somebody need to take this.
oh, hey, listen,
To the woodshed?
hundreds and thousands of views.
He sounds like a woman.
He does. It's that gender war baiting.
Yes.
It's so much of that nonsense, but it sells, right? All I'm trying to do is expose it for what it actually is. That guy doesn't give a shit about you. He doesn't care about our women or anything like that.
Right.
But it gets clicks.
That second quote, I think, is dialing me in on his agenda, because he's really, and I think you said that, Stefan, he's pandering to the pain of women. And I get this aspect. Like, I've heard women share this desire to get to a place where they're in their soft girl era, right?
Sure.
They're in this place where they can let themselves down. They don't have to feel the pressure of having to provide for a family or having to be the person that takes care of everybody. And so that's what he's really pandering to, but it's a twisted form of it.
Exactly. Because actually, I agree that there is nothing wrong with women wanting to have a provider in their lives. And I do agree that women should be in their soft era. That's where you belong. I need to be in my masculine era. I need to be, that's how lies. That's how we are, right?
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
Yeah.
And I should do everything I can to work 1,000,000 hours a day to provide and do all I can for my family.
Yeah.
And I don't want, my wife with a pickaxe in the field,
Right.
doing that stuff. Right. That being said, a gold digger, she's not. So when you mix the two of them, you say, hey, women should be gold diggers. They should look for providers. No, it's two different subjects.
That's good.
Women should look for providers. That's true. If that's your thing. And again, it depends on how much of that independence you want to give up. Because the second you look for a provider and you can't do for yourself, there's certain independence that is lost. Not that we shouldn't provide as men. My wife's friend was visiting us a couple of days ago, and she was telling us about this ordeal at the airport. And this guy was, livid because it was customer service. Things were bad, and his wife was in line, so he started making a scene. And then the wife was like, honey, you're embarrassing us. You're making a scene. And he yelled at her, and he said, get your ass out the line. My wife's friend was telling us this, and my wife was like, wait, what? What'd she do? She goes, she got her ass out the line.
Yeah.
Both
She's
these women,
kept.
Yeah, basically she's kept. Exactly.
Yeah.
She's kept. That's actually the word they use.
Yeah.
She's kept.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that situation and someone in public yells at you and say, get your ass over here, what do you do but get your ass over here?
Because they remove themselves from understanding who they are.
Correct.
To allow some man or woman, because it goes both ways.
Right?
Yeah.
For them to just move over to the side and be silent because they've now released themselves so they be provided for. It's not always financial.
There you go.
It's not always financial. So if you're looking for a provider, it doesn't have to be a financial provider. But if that provider is giving you the insight that you need, that doesn't mean you're kept. That doesn't mean that you're submissive. That means that you're in a relationship. But for him to say that they need to be kept women, again, it just says a lot about him.
And out of all the things that we provide as men, money is the only thing that we provide that diminishes, in a way, the woman. If I provide safety in my home, something goes bang in the middle of the night, I'm up. Wife doesn't have to be up. She knows Steph's here. We're protected. If we're out, she knows we're protected. I provide that, but she doesn't feel less than because of it. If I provide prayer,
that's good.
And I cover her with prayer,
again,
she doesn't feel less than, because she will tell you, my man prays over me every day. But if she's got no financial means whatsoever, and I'm that guy who's just spending all the money, there's something about it, I think, as human beings, where we just feel like we're a little less than, because we don't like that feeling of having to rely on someone entirely just to even survive.
There's a value system we've placed on money and power. Those two things have gone hand in hand, to where the more money you have, the more power you have. And so if you don't have money, the less power you have. And that's unfortunate. Like, even when you talk about marriage and partnership, like my wife, for instance, there's so much value that she adds to my life that I couldn't buy.
Correct.
It's priceless. Like, who I'm becoming as a man, as a therapist, even sometimes making sure I don't run around with my head cut off, is because sometimes there's intangible things that she provides that I could have all the money in the world, and if she was gone, I would crash in a heartbeat. You know what I'm saying?
And you just led to my very next statement, because what she brings, the intangible things that she brings. Because the next statement he makes is this.
Listen, if a man asks you what you bring to the table, that man has a low credit score.
Wow.
Oh my God.
So we're not even allowed as men to ask a woman what she brings to the table, because in his mind, I think he's smarter than this. It's no different than Trump. I think he does have to pander to his base. I think this dude is doing the exact same thing in that way. You know damn well what we mean when we say, what do you bring to the table? I'm not asking you to pay the light bill. I'm asking you for something else. And the intangibles, like you said, she keeps you together. She makes you better. She makes you grow. If you're dating just to sleep around, that's a different story. But if you're dating to be in relationships, that question is going to come up. What he's training them to believe is, if someone asks you that, he got a 500 credit score, run.
he's making the whole thing about money, and a true partnership, a true relationship, it goes beyond that. You have a mental, you have spiritual, you have so many other factors that are involved in relationship. The money aspect of it can be worked out. I've been married 23 years.
It's awesome.
Nice.
And I played the traditional role of a husband. I try to take care of everything. You know, of course, she has her own things that she take care of, but the majority of stuff I take care of because that's my role. But there are times where she may have to step in. That doesn't lessen me as a man, and it doesn't lessen her as a woman.
Correct.
You know, because we're working as a partnership. And what he's saying is, if you got to step in, that something is wrong. That thinking is primitive.
There you go. That's the word for it.
Yeah.
Almost like you want to look at the dude and go, hey, you know what? We wish you a speedy evolution, my friend.
Right.
Yeah.
Next quote.
It's really hard to respect a man that you have to pay for.
Now, I get that. Even if you ask me out, I'm still going to let you pay. So if I can't afford to pay, if that's my situation, we're just not going out. I might miss that entirely because that's just a pride thing in me. Now, when you're in a relationship with someone, like you said, you run your own business. You could have a good month, a bad month. Right. Things could happen. There could be money that could be allocated elsewhere. You can't touch it. There's a lot of their different variables. And wife steps in. Now, as men, as real men, this eats me up.
No, because if you're in that relationship, that doesn't diminishes you as a man. That's a partnership. Doesn't make you less of a man.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it diminishes you. I'm saying that it makes me feel a certain way pridefully, where I just feel less than. You're right. You shouldn't. No, this is my own head.
Because sometimes you have to get out of your own head.
And then you just said the key word. It's pride. In a relationship, that pride is no place for it. You have to survive as a unit. Not to mention if you have children, you have to survive whatever it takes as a unit. So I have no place for pride.
I struggle with that.
Yeah,
it's real though. That's being transparent.
Because if you're having a bad month and then that month turns into 3, what does that say to the family? Because of your pride, you've not allowed your partner to expose herself or involve herself in the situation. You've created, in a sense, a toxic relationship.
That's really good. Y'all are challenging him, but it's challenging me because she did also say the vows.
Yeah.
Right. You know? Right. She also took the same, there wasn't a quota, but she also said in sickness and in health, broke or rich. She said it too. So that's hit me.
So, as a man, you certainly want to make sure you're providing for the family or doing what needs to be. But if it's a first date and she asks you out, go.
Nigga, I ain't going. If I don't have the money, I'm not going.
The thing is, your first date is about getting to know that person.
Correct.
And them getting to know you. Yeah. That doesn't always constitute that you have to spend money to do that. Like you say, you can go to the park.
Yeah, get some ice cream.
Get ice cream cones.
I still need money for ice cream, but sure.
Well, if it's broke, go to the park.
Better yet, broke, don't date.
But I was going to add to that.
Say, you're not in a position to be in a relationship. Well, you need to work yourself out of that mess first. But that's a different conversation.
And to add to that, I wouldn't say, I do agree in a standpoint of if you're broke, because like, for example, when I got married, I was still in my master's program and I was at an internship. I was probably bringing in maybe less than $1,000 a month. My wife was working full time. She held it down, right? My uncle actually at the time gave me some really good advice. He was like, man, if you guys are dating, you ready to get married, and you feel like the Lord has told you to, do it. Because if her character and how she treats you now when you don't got money is great, you can trust her that when you do, like, it's going to be equally great. But my dad was on the opposite end. My dad was like, if the woman makes more money than you, she won't respect you. She won't respect you. And I remember I almost took that to heart.
Yeah, man.
The foundation, I think what he was trying to say was, as a man, don't be lazy. I think it's a healthy level. Take some pride in being able to provide and take care for your family.
Right.
Obviously, I think he communicated it the wrong way, I think, or in a way that was unhealthy. So I do think there's a level and sometimes where you do as a man want to take that pressure off of your spouse.
Absolutely.
You know? You don't want them to feel the pressure of rent is due again or mortgage is due again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's our job. I'm on my way to being a multimillionaire, and I told my wife I'm going to retire in 2 years, right?
That's awesome.
First thing she said to me was, "You're not retiring me. I'm going to keep bringing in money." Because, again, to that first point, she's like, I don't ever want to be in that situation to where I don't feel like I have control of things.
Yeah.
So even at that level, she still feels like, I can't totally give up what I feel is my agency at any point in time. And I'm like, you wouldn't. You know me. That's not the case. And she's just like, it's in my own head. I would not be in that situation. So whether I help you run the business, whatever it is, but it's some kind of way I'm earning.
And it's so funny you say that because when you were speaking about the couple of those in the airport, I started remembering one of my friends whose wife is in that situation. It's like, you didn't really think about it. You've seen it, but you didn't really think about it. I've heard him say, I make the decision. Whatever I say goes. And then I look over at her. She's just...
That's it. She's quiet.
Quiet. Even the children's credit cards all under him.
That is definitely control.
And to me, that speaks also to the man. And this is my own personal opinion. That speaks to a form of insecurity on his part. To even want someone that doesn't have a voice.
Correct.
I don't personally understand that because if I'm involved with someone, I don't want another child.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
That's what you do with your children. You tell them, look, hey, get your butt over here.
Yeah.
And they move. That's a child. I don't want to have a relationship with another child. I want my woman, she ain't got to be arguing with me all the time, but at least have some dignity about yourself.
Yeah.
Have some self-worth. If I'm coming off the mouth slick, at least look at me like I'm crazy. Like, hold up, bro.
You need to have someone who will challenge you on that. I've learned a while back, you show people and you tell people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't do this for anyone else, but this is what you do for me.
It goes back to Maya Angelou saying, when they show you who they are,
Believe them.
Yes, sir.
the first time.
Yeah.
Man, just to even going back to what you said, Vino, men can feel being in a marriage for a long time and then end up feeling alone, and the pressure is so much eventually mentally they can't take it no more, either because of them or these social media people. They've created a family where everything
They're carrying it all.
To the point where
And they don't have to.
there's a partner in the relationship, and so I think that's one of the negative effects sometimes when you get to a place where you're like, your wife is also like a kid and there's no voice, and there's even in the Bible, right? I know sometimes in the Christian space we've used the whole wife submit to your husband, man, you're the leader of your home, sometimes to belittle women. And something that I've often shared with women, when the Bible says that God wanted to create someone for Adam who was a helpmeet for him, that word helper or helpmeet is actually the same word they use for the Holy Spirit, which is the other part of the Trinity God, right? And that word helper is basically saying that this woman is equally meant to be able to help the man. And so I often tell women, like, you're not just a helper in like the help. You've literally been put on the same level in some ways as the Holy Spirit in a man's life. Like, that is very powerful. I think all as men, we should want a woman that can speak, can challenge us, can say, you tripping right here, bro. Like, can call out the booger in our nose so that we don't go out there looking crazy,
Right.
So anyway.
Good point. He has another one here.
If a man cares about how much money you make, he's scheming.
Scheming to do what?
I guess that's a question from a real man, right? Because I'm like, well, what do you mean I'm scheming? Scheming for what?
But you want her to be a gold digger.
Exactly.
Right, the double standard.
No, he contradicts himself all the time.
Okay.
But again, you can tell, is the audience going to analyze this and say, wait a second, this makes no sense, right? Because the audience just clicking likes and sharing because they want to send a message to one person in particular. When I met my wife, things moved pretty rapidly. She was just like, this is how much money I make. This is what the bonus looks like. Because the goal was, we're going to put our assets together and we're going to put our heads together and this effort together so we can fight this thing called life. So it makes sense that we have these discussions about finances, but he's looking at it differently.
Depending on, like you said, how fast the relationship is moving. That's an important topic. That falls in line with how you want to raise your kids. Again, what your religious beliefs are, what you expect as a husband and a wife, and the financial aspect of it. What are you bringing? What am I bringing? When we come together, what we'll be able to do as a unit. That's an adult relationship.
You said that's the word, right? That's adulting.
Yeah,
how do we not talk about this?
Yeah, that's not scheming. I mean, what is he? 16?
Nah, dude, he's a grown man. Wow. I would say late 30s, probably, maybe a little younger. Who knows? Because he's definitely, like I said, social media influencing. And
I guess you can go back to asking what his upbringing looked like.
A lot of times I find that people like that, he may have had a normal upbringing, but he found a niche.
Correct.
Okay.
And he's exploiting that niche.
Okay.
You're going to like this one.
If the man is insecure about you, he thinks that you are better than him.
You know what's funny about that? I feel like that's one of those gender double standards. Like that word in general, right? Sometimes it can get a overly negative or a shaming connotation. So if you're insecure, oh man, you're insecure. Like you need to. Where really insecurities, I don't feel safe.
Say that one more time.
Insecurity just means I don't feel safe.
Right.
And so first, let's just say if the man does feel insecure, I don't think the first solution is to just shame him. Let's talk about it. Why don't you feel safe with me going out and doing this and thing? Is it something that you've experienced, right?
Great point. But that's exactly what it is. A good majority of the time, if we expose that insecurity, which is simply, when you put it that way, you explain what it is I don't feel safe in this situation. I don't feel safe with you. We're made to feel ashamed for exposing that. Oh, you're insecure because, I look good. I'm going out, So,
and I think it also stems, it could be from past trauma.
Yep.
They could have been in a previous relationship.
The man, that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If he was in a previous relationship and let's say significant other cheated on him and she was with her girls when she did it, that could generate this unsafe feeling. Okay, you going out with your girlfriends the last time, in his mind, the last time that happened,
Dexter showed up.
Yeah. So I don't want you to go out with your girlfriends.
Yeah.
Because of my personal trauma.
Yeah. Is that fair?
No, that's not fair.
Not fair.
That's not fair.
So then that's the part where you talk about it, right?
That's all that is.
That's to your
I
point.
think that's past trauma.
Yeah.
More than anything. Not so much insecurity.
Yeah.
It's past trauma, and he's acting on that past trauma.
That's a good distinction to make. Sometimes an insecurity can come from past trauma. Sometimes insecurity just could be like a safety. Because if it's a past trauma, now we can talk through it and how do we get over the hump? Because ultimately it's not fair to the women either because you're making her
responsible for what happened to you in the past.
Exactly.
And she's not that person.
Right.
She's not.
So to your point, she should have the presence of mind to say, this person that I care very much about is feeling possibly unsafe in this particular situation. Let's talk about it. Let's address it. Yeah. Right? Because you can say, the last time this happened, I was dating someone who went on a girls trip. Something bad happened. Yeah. And I don't want that to be.
She ran into Dexter.
She ran into Dexter, on the beach in Jamaica.
Dexter finna become the pseudonym for it.
It's always Dexter, bro. Hey, girl, how you doing?
What you doing, beautiful woman, by yourself?
Beautiful woman like
Wait,
you.
you're Jamaican?
No, man, I'm not.
Gosh.
That was good.
That was good.
But everybody knows that. That's Eddie Murphy, man. So I think it's your responsibility to say, I feel this way. But it's also her responsibility to say, what's making you feel this way? If you care enough about each other, you kind of step in to say, let's address this. The reason we were attracted physically before we did anything else, before she opened her mouth, we saw her. We were like, oh, shit. This is someone I'd like to talk to. This is someone I can see myself being with. And then you proceeded from there. So that hasn't changed. Sometimes, over time, they look even better.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't. I don't know. But the whole insecurity thing is one of those things where I don't think it means that we think she's better than we are or that she's above my station. Now there's legitimate insecurities. Maybe there's no trauma whatsoever. Maybe it's just, I don't want you wearing that because you look a little scandalous in that. I don't want you going out.
You got to ask the question, when you met her, was she dressing that way?
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a really good
and if the answer is no,
then you have to look at, okay, why all of a sudden now you decided you want to dress this way? It reminds me when I was younger, I dated a young woman. When I met her, she always dressed
conservative.
No.
Oh,
the direct opposite.
Okay,
yes.
she was that girl.
Yeah, she was that girl. Walk in the room, everybody turn around like, whoa, she was that girl. Once we started dating, she didn't change the way she dressed, and my friends, man, you let your girl go out like that, and I didn't have a problem with it because that's what attracted me to her.
Right.
How she looked. I'm like, why would I want to change? I'm confident in my situation. You know what I'm saying? Because we had conversations and I expressed the opinions of other people. And I was doing that more or less to just kind of make her aware. I wasn't trying to tell her she should change, but just be knowledgeable. And her retort was, okay, that's their problem. Because I know who I am as a person. I'm not loose. I'm not this. I'm about my business. I look good in what I wear, and I like to wear what I want to wear. Cool. If you like it, I love it.
Yeah.
When I would get this feedback from my boys, I had to look into myself and say, okay, am I going to allow their opinion
The peer pressure.
to mess up my relationship? So my thing was, hey, I ain't got a problem with it.
Yeah.
And we dated for many years. Still, my cousin, man, you crazy. I would never let my girl. Well, that's your girl. That's why you having problems.
But it goes back to that now you're spending more time with her versus them. So let's see if we could build a wedge in between this. So we have to be mindful of when we're dating and when we finally get married.
That's the same with girlfriends. They do the same thing.
I was gonna say
they do the exact. They do the exact thing.
I was gonna say I guess
They do.
but I have never had a friend like that, and if I do, I don't know him. I don't know who that is, and
I don't have any friends like that.
Because I can imagine I'm talking. We hanging out all the time, Merlin, and all of a sudden you find this girl that you're super happy with, and all of a sudden I feel like, you don't spend as much time with me no more, Nick. What are you talking about?
But honestly, but you have those guys that are that.
I think it may be more or less envy that
There
you
you go.
have
There you go.
that woman. And they don't. Like with some women, they see a woman with a good man and they don't have one. So, they do little things to sabotage. Misery loves company. Where you got your friends, your boys,
Right.
they, oh man, he ain't the same no more since he got with old girl, No, I'm not.
That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying?
That's right. I'm not.
That's right.
I was gonna say, why would you want me to be the
Yeah.
same?
I suppose because they're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they want you to be stuck with them.
Right.
No, bro.
I got one here that's where he just contradicts himself over the next two statements. One statement is,
He's out, not responding to your text with God knows who, probably that hoe. Let's see who can be the bigger hoe.
this is, again, remind you, this is a man saying this to women. You're not always in meetings looking at your text, responding immediately. If my wife calls me or texts me, I don't respond, she chills because she knows I'm probably with a customer, right? Something's happening. If she calls me twice and she calls me once, I don't answer and she calls me right back, whatever I'm doing, I'm dropping. Because I'm like, my wife never does this. This might be an emergency. Excuse me. I'm stepping out, taking the call. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I butt dialed you. I'm like, come on, man. But me not responding to your text in whatever you deem a reasonable time does not mean I'm doing anything wrong. And that's what he's basically saying. So you know what? Why don't I jump the gun and go be a hoe because he's probably being a hoe.
Sowing the seeds of mistrust. And on the flip side, even if he was, right, is that really how you want to respond? Tit for tat? Not saying that you should stick with him or anything like that, but why would you want to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, you don't even know the situation.
That's true.
As to why he's not responding to the text.
Yeah.
Like you said,
You
you
jumping
jumped in the gun for something that you don't really know what's going on.
Like I may be looking at something on my phone and the volume is up and I'll turn the volume down. I accidentally turn down my ring volume. Okay, if I don't know this and my wife calls, she may call a couple times. I don't hear the phone. And I'm a beast at checking my phone every few minutes and I see, okay, I got a couple of missed calls. I called back. She would ask me, I called a couple of times, you didn't answer. Yeah, my ringer was down. I didn't know it. That's that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not calling back the next day. It's like, within an hour or whatever.
A lot of times I'm not able to answer no calls because when I'm working on my clients, my attention is on my client. I'm not going to be on the phone. Like you said, if it's an instance where I get 2 calls back to back, okay, what's up? People call me all day. I get to you when I get to you.
Exactly.
Right.
So then the contradiction is this. You're going to love this.
If a man is texting you all day long, that man is not busy enough.
What?
Wow, that is definitely
Right?
contradictory.
You see how he's just messing with people?
That's crazy.
A lot of people will say women don't know what they want. Because you'll ask for this, you'll ask for that, but then when you get it, turns out it's not what you want. You wanted something else. Well, this is too much of it. I want a sensitive man. Well, this nigga crying. Shit. I don't want that anymore. I don't like that. I feel unsafe now because he's weak. Right? So
Now, just
explain
because
to
he
that.
cries doesn't mean he's weak.
Of course not.
No.
Of course not. Of
So
course
we have
not.
to-
That's not what.
we
No.
have to
That's not what we're saying. We're saying that
re-educate her to understand that as well.
Exactly. But they don't know what they want is what he's playing on right now.
That's what I was going to
He's playing on that.
essentially trying to create women who, no matter what type of a healthy relationship they're internally going to feel unstable, insecure, and always suspicious.
Yeah.
He's sowing those seeds of doubt.
Yeah. And you say he has how many followers?
I'm convinced that social media is about making the human race regress. I don't know how many followers he has. I haven't been on his page, but when I saw this clip that this woman shared, I saw that it had been viewed, I want to say 20, 30,000 times.
Wow.
You know, so these are videos that are being shared. That's probably going to hit 1 million views easily.
Yeah.
So again,
he's pandering to a particular segment.
Yeah.
You know,
Big time.
and they eating it up.
It would not have gotten that much traction had it not been for people sharing it.
Yeah.
And if you're sharing it because you're like, oh, I believe this. Let me share it with my homegirls. Let me just put it on my page. Or to send messages to men.
Are they really believing it, or they're sharing it to say, do you all understand this clown?
No, I don't think so.
I think it's, you know, they probably have experienced something in their life that he may have said, and he owned it.
Yeah, that struck a chord.
Gotcha.
No, that brain.
Yeah.
He on something, but he ain't on that.
Yeah. I have one more that's interesting here.
Don't ask men that haven't had a job in the last 5 years walking around talking about, I'm the prize. I'm the prize.
Well, he needs to get a job.
Yeah, number one.
So one thing we agree.
Yeah,
I think this is where I want to give him a pass and go, all right, cool. Because number one,
not the prize, bro.
number one, I don't think any of us should be walking around talking, I'm the prize. You can say, hey, this is what I bring to the table. I have a lot of confidence in who I am. I know that if someone gets with me, that I will add value to their lives. But this phrase of I'm the prize, as if I need to be chased and pursued, and, you know, I think that's, again, to use that word that I used earlier, I think it's dangerous for men to start thinking that way.
But you know, there are men who believe that.
Well, you know, Kevin Samuels used to say that all the time. The high value man is the prize. The women, you know, because women always say that they're the prize, and he always would say a high value man is the prize because he brings so much to the table.
But if you've not worked in 5 years, you're certainly not a damn prize.
Well, if you...
you're a bum at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if even with that, right, to whom? Because you could be the prize to someone who has no hope of meeting someone like yourself. If you go into the bottom of the barrel and you scrape someone from the bottom of the barrel, sure, you're the prize.
Right.
But to a woman who has a self-worth, who takes care of herself, who brings all these things to the table, whether they be physical, financial, or all the intangibles, you're not the prize. No. You guys basically complement each other in a way that allow both of you to grow. So that's why I don't like that phrase at all of who's the prize, because if you believe that she's the prize, there's a problem in that relationship. Right? You can't live without her. You put her above you, and then there you go. You got a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Key takeaways.
Knowing that there's been multiple, maybe different versions of people like this on social media, it definitely challenges me from a therapy standpoint, continue to do the work of talking with men and women and marriages and couples. Because on one hand, we're kind of fighting against social media.
Yeah.
People who are struggling in their marriage and stuff are probably going to hear from social media before they hear from a therapist.
Correct.
I think I said earlier, Vina, you said something off the air, and I was like, man, like that's old school wisdom. People are going to hear social media before they even hear old school wisdom, right? So I think one, it's just challenging me to put more of that out there because something's got to combat this nonsense, right? Yeah. And I think two, I think it's just reminding me, man, like whether you're high value men or high value women, the value is not just on the things that you bring, but how you serve the person that you say you love versus how me using that stuff to make myself look good or to be entitled, you know? So whoever this dude is, he shuts his page down and eventually he's like, man, this was trash. That may never happen, but.
Yeah, like I said, I mentioned earlier before we started recording with Derek Jackson, right? Because he was writing books and he was always like shitting on men. Well, if a man loves you, he's going to know within the first 5 minutes he's going to do this. He don't show up, you need to go and kick that man to the curb. Again, you're not taking any of the variants into consideration.
Yeah.
The man ain't call you back in 5 minutes. He don't love you. Wait a minute. What is he doing?
Yeah.
What's happening in that relationship, right? Exactly. Context matters. And when you throw things out there like that are out of context or without context, without shaping it, again, it creates a situation to where you're going to have this gender war that's going to propagate. And the worst thing, and again, to me, again, which is the biggest issue that I have, is that it's affecting us as a people more than I see it affect any other race. Because they still know who the hell they are and they know what they got going on in their household.
Yeah. And they don't have the same problem that we have to deal with.
Very true.
Right.
And I think with this gentleman, he's doing the same thing that Kevin Samuels, the other guy you mentioned, Steve Harvey.
That's another one.
Yeah, they find things that are within our community that are issues. They pander to the women because they know they're the ones that's going to listen and they're going to buy the books and they're going to listen to the podcast or whatever. And it's all about the clicks and the purchases and all that, because back when they had their book, Think Like a Man, with Steve Harvey. My thing was, some of the things, a lot of the things they were saying, yeah, you can relate that to some men. But he was doing that like it was across the board. Right. All of us think the same way. And everybody doesn't think the same way.
We are not a monolith.
Right. You know, we all have different backgrounds, different upbringings. So the way we process, the way we handle certain situations is going to be unique to each and every one of us. But the way he painted it is like, this is how men think in general. It's coming from a man, so, it must be true.
Yeah.
He's giving all the secrets.
He's giving the secrets.
No. He's telling you what you want to hear. Right. So you can buy his book.
Like you said, you know, that's not all men. And so the takeaway is this: we have to reinforce and re-educate our partner to understand that we're individuals. So we're going to operate as an individual and not paint us with the same brush that's been used for everyone else. Because, again, that's going to diminish our relationship.
And I think podcasts like this is one of the ways that we can combat that.
Correct.
When you have different opinions from different men from different backgrounds, because we're thinking logically, you know, and we're not blanketing everything and everyone is the same way. That's probably what is needed. Let's not just let him be the only voice that's heard.
Yeah. If they seek us out, then they'll find us. We're not making enough controversial statements to get the likes and the clicks. One thing about podcasts is that it's an evergreen medium. This conversation can be heard in 2040, right? So because it's always going to be needed. Right. So great point, gentlemen. Yeah, appreciate you guys so much for being on the podcast with me today and having this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it's one wonderful day to start my Sunday, man.
So now we have to do the outro. So who are you going to be, Vino?
I was looking at Rocky last night. I think I'm going to do Sylvester Stallone. Hold on.
He's like, I got to get right.
Hey, yo, please support our... see, I'm already saying, Adrian, please support us by following the show. You know, me and Paulie, we left 5-star review on this Apple podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next week when we share conversations surrounding real issues we deal with. You know, every hey, Paulie, tell me what this word is. Every day, you know, manhood matters. We're out.
Yeah, man. Way to get into it, buddy. Way to get into it. That's what's up.
Okay, Paulie. That was great. The pauses were solid. The pauses.
Yeah, he took me back to that.